The cold wind of Kepler 442b swept across the ancient ruins as Dr. Lisa Martinez knelt beside a broken crystal tower. Her breathing mask fogged up in the thin atmosphere, but she didn't care. After 3 months of digging through alien dirt, she had finally found something important. The crystal was smooth and blue, about the size of her head. Strange symbols glowed faintly inside it, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Lisa had seen many alien artifacts before, but this one felt different. It felt alive. "Jake, you need to see this," she called over her radio. Captain Jake Sullivan was back at the landing site, checking their ship's systems. The Starlight had been their home for 2 years now, carrying them from one dead world to another. "What did you find this time, Doc?" Jake's voice crackled through the speaker. "Another broken pot?" Lisa smiled despite herself. Jake always joked about her work, but she knew he respected what she did. Finding pieces of lost civilizations was important work, even if it didn't seem exciting to a ship captain. "This is different," she said, carefully lifting the crystal. "I think it's some kind of data storage device. The Zephyrians might have left their final records in here." The Zephyrians had been dead for 50,000 years. Their cities covered 3 continents of this cold planet, but the people themselves had vanished without a trace. Lisa had been trying to figure out what happened to them for months. She carried the crystal back to their temporary lab, a small dome they had set up near the ruins. Her research assistant, Amy Chun, was already there, working on smaller artifacts they had found earlier. "Amy, look at this," Lisa said, placing the crystal on the main table. "Can you help me connect it to the translation computer?" Amy looked up from her work. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and curious eyes. This was her first mission to an alien world, and she was always excited to see new discoveries. "Wow, that's beautiful," Amy said, moving closer to examine. "The crystal. The symbols are moving inside it. I've never seen anything like that." They worked together to connect the crystal to their equipment. The translation computer was their most important tool. It could take alien languages and turn them into words they could understand. It had taken years to build, and it contained information about hundreds of dead civilizations. The crystal hummed when they connected it. The symbols inside began to glow brighter, and suddenly the lab was filled with a soft blue light. The computer screens flickered to life, showing lines of text in an alien script. "It's working," Amy whispered. "The computer is reading the data." Lisa watched the screen carefully. The Zephyrian language was complex, with symbols that could mean different things depending on their position. But slowly, the computer began to translate the alien words into English. The first few lines were simple, names and dates, probably. But then something appeared that made Lisa's heart skip a beat. "Amy, are you seeing this?" she asked. Amy nodded, her face pale. Is that ... is that about Earth?" The translation was clear. "We flee to the void. Earth's children guard something far worse than themselves." Lisa read the line again, then a third time. It didn't make sense. The Zephyrians had lived 50,000 years ago, long before humans had space travel. How could they know about Earth? And what did they mean by something far worse? "There's more," Amy said, pointing to the screen. "Look at this part." The next section was longer. "We have seen the records of the ancients. We know what sleeps beneath the blue world. The hairless ones do not know their purpose, but they serve it well. We will not stay to see what happens when they fail." Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold planet. She had studied dozens of extinct civilizations, but none had ever mentioned Earth before, and none had ever written about humans in such strange terms. "Print everything," she told Amy. "I want a full copy of this data." While Amy worked, Lisa contacted the ship. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you come to the lab?" "On my way," Jake replied. You sound worried. Captain Jake Sullivan arrived 10 minutes later, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. He was a tall man in his 40s, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 20 years, and very little surprised him anymore. "What's the emergency?" he asked, taking off his helmet. Lisa showed him the translated text. Jake read it twice, his expression growing more serious with each word. "This has to be a mistake," he said finally. "Maybe the computer got the translation wrong." "I checked it 3 times, Lisa replied. "The computer is sure about the translation." "These are the Zephyrians' final records, Jake. They're talking about Earth and humans." Jake was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the crystal, then at the computer screen, then back at Lisa. "What do you think it means?" he asked. "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But I want to check something. Amy, can you access the database? I want to compare this to other archaeological records." Amy's fingers flew over the keyboard. She pulled up files from 12 different worlds, each containing records of extinct civilizations. Lisa had studied all of them at some point in her career. "Look for any mention of Earth," Lisa instructed, "or humans, or anything that might refer to our solar system." For the next hour, they searched through thousands of pages of translated alien texts. Most contained nothing interesting. Records of trade, politics, and daily life from civilizations that had been dead for millennia. But then Amy found something. "Dr. Martinez, look at this," she said, her voice shaking. "This is from the Altarian civilization. They lived 30,000 years ago." The text appeared on the screen. "The Starwalkers from the Third World carry a burden they do not understand. We have chosen to seek new homes far from their influence." Lisa's mouth went dry. "Keep looking," she said. They found more. "The Centaurians, dead for 100,000 years. The guardians of the deep prison know not what they guard. We pray they never learn. The Vegan Empire, extinct for 20,000 years. We have seen the warnings in the quantum foam. The Blue World's children serve a purpose greater than conquest. We will not interfere." By the time they finished searching, they had found similar references in the records of 9 different civilizations. All of them mentioned Earth. All of them mentioned humans. And all of them seemed afraid. "This is impossible," Jake said, slumping in his chair. "How could all these different species know about Earth? Most of them died before we even invented fire." Lisa stared at the collection of translated texts on the screen. 9 civilizations spanning 200,000 years, all saying the same thing about humanity. All of them afraid of something connected to Earth. "I don't know," she said, quietly, "but I think we need to find out." The news spread through human space like wildfire. Within 3 days of Dr. Martinez's discovery, emergency meetings were being held on every major colony world. The Terran Colonial Authority had never seen anything like it. Admiral Helen Carter sat at the head of the conference table in Mars Station Alpha, her weathered face showing the strain of command. She had been in charge of colonial defense for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. Around the table sat representatives from 7 different worlds, all of them looking as confused as she felt. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Governor Bill Jackson from New Terra. 9 different alien civilizations, all dead for thousands of years, left messages warning about Earth. Dr. Martinez nodded from her seat at the far end of the table. She had arrived on Mars 3 hours ago, still wearing her field clothes from the dig site. "That's correct, Governor. And we've found 3 more since I sent my first report." The holographic display in the center of the table flickered to life, showing the translated alien texts. Admiral Carter had read them all twice, but they still made her stomach turn. "The pattern is clear," Dr. Martinez continued. "Every civilization that achieved space travel and learned about Earth's location chose to flee rather than make contact. They all describe humans as guardians of something terrible. Colonel Frank Miller, the head of military intelligence, leaned forward. Doctor, you're asking us to believe that alien species knew about humanity before we even existed as a spacefaring civilization. That's impossible. I thought so too, Dr. Martinez replied. But the evidence is overwhelming. The Zephyrians died 50,000 years ago. The Centaurians were extinct 100,000 years ago. Yet they all knew about Earth and its inhabitants. Governor Linda Ross from Colony Beta spoke up. What exactly are they afraid of? The messages talk about something we're guarding, but they don't say what it is. Dr. Martinez touched a control on the table, and new text appeared on the hologram. The Altarians were more specific. They called it the hunger that devours stars. The Centaurians named it the silence between thoughts. The Vegan Empire referred to it as the darkness that waits. Admiral Carter felt a chill run down her spine. All different names for the same thing? That's what we believe, Dr. Martinez said. Whatever it is, it scared these civilizations. Enough to abandon entire star systems rather than risk encountering it. A room fell silent for a moment. Outside the station's windows, Mars hung in the darkness, its red surface dotted with the lights of human cities. It was hard to believe that something on distant Earth could have influenced alien civilizations for hundreds of thousands of years. Something else, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Nick Thompson, a quiet man in his 30s who worked for colonial intelligence. He rarely spoke at these meetings, but when he did, people listened. What is it, Nick? Admiral Carter asked. Nick stood up, his face pale. We've been keeping this classified, but given the circumstances, I think you all need to know. We've found similar warnings in 3 other locations, sites that were classified above your security levels. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Admiral Carter's voice was sharp when she spoke. What sites? The ruins on Proxima Centauri b, the derelict space station in the Vega system, and the underground chambers on Kepler 186f. Nick's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he spoke. All of them contained warnings about Earth and humanity. We've been sitting on this information for 2 years. Governor Jackson slammed his hand on the table. 2 years? You've known about this for 2 years and said nothing? It was deemed too sensitive, Nick replied. Command didn't want to cause panic. They thought it might be some kind of psychological warfare by an unknown enemy. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. What did these other sites say? Nick touched his tablet, and new text appeared on the hologram. The Proxima site contained this message. We have seen the watchers of the deep prison. They know not what they guard, but they guard it well. We go to the far stars, where the darkness cannot follow. The Vega station had this. The third world's children are bound to their duty by chains they cannot see. We pray they never break free, for all our sakes. And Kepler 186f? Dr. Martinez asked. Nick's voice was barely above a whisper. The servants of the sleeper do not know they serve. When they learn the truth, the stars will weep. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Carter looked around the table at the faces of the colonial leaders. Fear, confusion, and anger were written clearly on every face. How many more sites are there? She asked Nick. We don't know, he admitted. But our deep space surveys have found references to Earth in the ruins of at least 20 different civilizations. Every single one describes humanity as unwilling guardians of something catastrophic. Dr. Martinez stood up slowly. Admiral, I request permission to return to Earth. If these aliens are right, if we really are guarding something, then the answers have to be there. Absolutely not, Colonel Miller said immediately. This could be an elaborate hoax. Some kind of alien trick to get us to abandon our defensive positions. With respect, Colonel, Dr. Martinez replied. These civilizations have been dead for tens of thousands of years. They didn't coordinate their stories across time and space just to fool us. Governor Ross nodded. The doctor is right. Whatever this is, it's been going on for far longer than human civilization has existed. We need to know what we're dealing with. Admiral Carter was quiet for a long moment, staring at the holographic display. The alien warnings seemed to pulse with their own light, each one a piece of a puzzle that no one wanted to solve. There's something else we need to consider, she said finally. If these civilizations were right, if we really are guarding something terrible, then what happens when we spread out across the galaxy? What happens when there aren't enough of us concentrated on Earth to maintain whatever protection we're supposedly providing? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Humanity had been expanding into space for 50 years, establishing colonies on dozens of worlds. If the alien warnings were true, then every ship that left Earth, every family that moved to a new world, might be weakening some kind of cosmic defense system. We need more information, Admiral Carter said. Dr. Martinez, you have permission to return to Earth. Take a full research team. I want you to investigate every ancient site on the planet. If humanity really is guarding something, then we need to know what it is before it's too late. Dr. Martinez nodded. I'll need access to classified archaeological sites, places that have been off limits to civilian research. You'll have it, the Admiral promised. Whatever resources you need. This is now our highest priority. As the meeting ended and the representatives began to file out, Admiral Carter remained in her seat, staring at the alien warnings on the hologram. Somewhere out there, dozens of civilizations had looked at humanity and seen not conquerors or explorers, but prison guards. The thought terrified her more than any enemy fleet ever. What were they guarding? And what would happen if they failed? The nightmares started on New Haven 3 weeks after the meeting on Mars. At first, only a few people complained about bad dreams. But within days, half the colony was having the same terrifying visions. Dr. Carol Evans was one of the first to notice the pattern. She worked as a psychiatrist at the colony's main hospital, and her waiting room was suddenly full of frightened people who couldn't sleep. Doctor, it's always the same dream, said Maria Santos, a farmer from the Eastern District. I'm standing in complete darkness, but I can feel something huge pressing against invisible walls. And there's a sound like something enormous testing the bars of a cage. Carol had heard the same description from 20 other patients that week. The dreams were so vivid that people woke up screaming, convinced that whatever they had seen was real. When did these dreams start? Carol asked. About 3 weeks ago, Maria replied. Right after the news reports about those alien warnings. Do you think there's a connection? Carol didn't answer immediately. She had been having the same dreams herself, but she hadn't told anyone. In her dreams, she stood in an endless dark space while something massive and hungry moved just beyond her sight. The worst part was the feeling that whatever was out there knew she was watching. That same day, similar reports came in from 6 other colonies. On New Terra, the dreams were so common that the governor declared a public health emergency. On Colony Beta, sleep medications were running out because so many people were afraid to close their eyes. Meanwhile, on Luna Base, Dr. Ben Walker was discovering something that made the nightmares seem even more frightening. Ben was a quantum physicist who spent his days studying the fundamental forces of the universe. He had been running routine gravitational scans when he noticed something impossible. Kate, look at this, he said to his colleague, Dr. Kate Miller. These readings are coming from Earth's core. Kate leaned over his shoulder to look at the data. The numbers on the screen showed gravitational anomalies that defied everything they knew about physics. Something deep inside the Earth was creating waves of gravity that rippled outward into space. That's impossible, Kate said. Nothing that size could exist inside a planet without tearing it apart. Ben nodded grimly. That's what I thought too. But the readings are consistent. There's something down there, something massive. And it's not natural. They spent the next few days checking and rechecking their equipment. The results were always the same. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, something enormous was creating gravitational distortions that shouldn't exist. There's something else, Kate said during their third day of testing. Look at the pattern of the gravitational pulses. Ben studied the data again. The gravitational waves came in regular intervals, like a heartbeat. But when he compared the timing to the reports from the colonies, he found something terrifying. The pulses match the nightmares, he whispered. Every time there's a gravitational spike, people across human space report the same dream. Kate stared at the data in horror. You're saying that whatever is inside Earth is somehow connected to the dreams? I don't know how, Ben admitted. But the timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Every pulse corresponds to a nightmare report from one of the colonies. While Ben and Kate struggled to understand their discovery, teams of archaeologists on Earth were making their own disturbing findings. Dr. San Rodriguez led one of the teams investigating ancient monuments around the world. Sam had been studying prehistoric sites for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like what he found. At Stonehenge, the ancient stone circle was humming with energy, producing a low vibration that could be felt in the ground for miles around. This is new, he told his assistant, Dr. Linda Park. I've been here dozens of times, and the stones have never done this before. Linda held up a scanner that measured electromagnetic activity. The energy levels are off the charts. It's like the whole monument has been turned into some kind of machine. Similar reports came in from teams around the world. The pyramids in Egypt were glowing with a faint blue light that could only be seen with special equipment. Easter Island statues were vibrating at frequencies that made nearby animals run away in terror. Ancient sites in Peru, China, and Ireland were all showing the same kinds of energy signatures. It's as if they're all connected, Dr. Rodriguez reported to Dr. Martinez, who had arrived on Earth to coordinate the investigation. Every major prehistoric monument on the planet is resonating with the same frequency. Dr. Martinez stood in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, watching as her team took readings. The structure looked normal to the naked eye, but their instruments told a different story. Energy was flowing through the ancient stones like water through pipes. The frequency matches the gravitational pulses from Earth's core, she said. These monuments aren't just ancient buildings. They're part of some kind of system. Over the following days, the archaeological teams made even more shocking discoveries. Ground-penetrating radar revealed that the monuments were connected by underground tunnels that ran for thousands of miles. The tunnels were too old and too precisely built to be the work of primitive humans. This network spans the entire planet, Dr. Rodriguez explained during a video conference with the other teams. It's like a giant circuit board buried under the Earth's surface. But the most disturbing discovery came when they examined the symbols carved into the monuments. The writing was older than any known human civilization, and it told a story that made everyone's blood run cold. The symbols describe a great evil that once threatened to destroy all life in the universe. Dr. Martinez explained to Admiral Carter during their daily briefing. According to the carvings, this evil was imprisoned beneath the earth by a coalition of alien races who sacrificed themselves to create the containment system. Admiral Carter's face was grim. The monuments are part of the prison? That's what it looks like, Dr. Martinez confirmed. And the system requires constant maintenance by conscious beings. The symbols suggest that early humans were ... modified ... to serve as guardians without knowing it. The implications were staggering. If the alien warnings were true, then humanity's entire existence was tied to maintaining a cosmic prison. Every human thought, every act of consciousness, might be part of a vast machine designed to keep something terrible locked away. What happens if the system fails? Admiral Carter asked. Dr. Martinez looked at the ancient symbols glowing on her tablet screen. According to the carvings, the imprisoned entity feeds on the life force of entire star systems. If it escapes, it will consume everything in its path until the universe is empty and cold. As if responding to her words, the gravitational pulses from Earth's core grew stronger. Across human space, the nightmares became more vivid and more frequent. And deep beneath the planet's surface, something that had been sleeping for millions of years began to stir. The prison that had held for so long was starting to weaken. And humanity, the unwitting guardians of the galaxy's greatest threat, was beginning to understand the true weight of their burden. The expedition to the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean began on a Tuesday morning under gray skies. Dr. Alex Foster stood on the deck of the research vessel Deep Explorer, watching his team make final preparations for their dive to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Alex was a marine biologist who had spent 15 years studying the ocean's deepest places. But the readings they had been getting from the ocean floor were unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive energy signatures were coming from depths that should have been empty except for mud and strange fish. "The submersible is ready," announced Dr. Carol Evans, the expedition's geologist. She was a small woman with determined eyes who had joined the team after her work on the lunar gravitational anomalies. "We can take 5 people down to the source of the energy readings." Alex nodded and looked at the rest of his team. Dr. Tony Lee was an archaeologist who specialized in underwater ruins. Dr. Marie Johnson was a linguist who could read ancient symbols. And Captain Rob Davis was their pilot, a man who had been diving to impossible depths for 20 years. "Remember," Alex said as they climbed into the submersible, "we're looking for anything that might explain the energy readings. The signals are coming from 36,000 feet down, right at the bottom of the trench." The descent took 3 hours. As they went deeper, the water around them became completely black. Their lights cut through the darkness like tiny suns, revealing strange fish and underwater mountains that had never seen sunlight. "Look at that," Dr. Evans said, pointing through the porthole. "The rock formations down here are all wrong. They're too regular, too geometric." Alex saw what she meant. The walls of the trench were covered in smooth, perfectly straight lines that ran for miles. No natural process could create such patterns. "It's like someone carved the entire ocean floor," Dr. Lee observed. "But who could do something like this?" As they reached the bottom, their lights revealed something that made everyone gasp. The floor of the trench was not made of mud and rock. Instead, it was a vast metal surface covered in symbols that glowed with their own light. "This is impossible," Captain Davis whispered. "The ocean floor here is supposed to be 4 billion years old. But this metal looks like it was placed yesterday." Alex guided the submersible along the metal surface, following the glowing symbols. The markings seemed to lead somewhere, like a path through the darkness. After an hour of following the trail, they found what they were looking for. A massive opening in the ocean floor stretched before them, so large that their lights couldn't reach the other side. The opening was perfectly circular and lined with the same glowing symbols they had been following. "It's an entrance," Dr. Johnson said, her voice filled with awe. "But an entrance to what?" Alex made the decision to go deeper. The submersible descended into the opening, and their lights revealed walls covered in writing that was older than human civilization. The symbols told a story that made everyone's blood run cold. "Can you read it?" Alex asked Dr. Johnson. She nodded slowly, her face pale. It's a warning. And a history. It says that long ago, there was an entity that traveled between stars, consuming entire solar systems. It fed on the life force of planets, leaving nothing but empty space behind. A submersible continued deeper into the artificial cavern. The walls stretched away into darkness, and Alex realized they were inside something enormous. This wasn't just a cave. It was a structure, built by someone or something with technology beyond human understanding. The writing says that many alien races came together to stop this entity. Dr. Johnson continued, reading the symbols as they passed. They called it the Devourer. It had already consumed hundreds of star systems when they found a way to trap it. Dr. Lee leaned forward. How did they trap something that powerful? They used Earth, Dr. Johnson replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They chose Earth because it was young and full of life. They buried the Devourer deep beneath the planet's surface and built a prison around it. As they descended further, the walls of the cavern began to change. The symbols became more complex, and the story they told became more detailed. The alien races had not just built a prison. They had created a system that required constant maintenance. The prison needed guardians, Dr. Johnson explained. Conscious beings who could maintain the barriers that kept the Devourer contained. But the alien races were exhausted from the war. Most of them died creating the prison. Dr. Evans studied the readings from her instruments. Look at these energy patterns. The entire structure is designed to channel consciousness somehow. But how? The answer came when they reached the bottom of the cavern. There, in a chamber so large it could have held a city, they found the most shocking discovery of all. The walls were covered in detailed diagrams showing the modification of early human ancestors. They changed us, Dr. Lee said, staring at the images. The aliens altered human DNA to make us into guardians. The diagrams showed how human consciousness had been modified to serve as a living component of the prison system. Every human thought, every dream, every creative act strengthened the barriers that kept the Devourer contained. We're not just guardians, Dr. Johnson realized. We're part of the prison itself. Human consciousness is what keeps the Devourer locked away. Alex felt sick as he understood the implications. That's why the other civilizations ran away. They knew that humanity's existence was tied to maintaining the prison. If we failed, the Devourer would be free to consume the galaxy. Dr. Evans checked her instruments again. The energy readings are getting stronger, and they're coming from directly below us. They descended further into the structure, following a spiraling path that led to the very heart of the prison. Walls here were different, made of some kind of crystal that pulsed with dark energy. And at the center of it all, they found it. The Devourer was not a creature in any sense they understood. It was a presence, a vast consciousness of pure hunger that pressed against the crystal walls of its prison. Even contained, its power was terrifying. The submersible's instruments went crazy as they approached, and everyone felt a terrible weight. In their minds, "It's aware of us," Dr. Johnson whispered. "It knows we're here." The crystal walls were covered in cracks, hairline fractures that leaked dark energy into the water around them. The prison was old, and it was failing. After millions of years, the barriers that kept the Devourer contained were beginning to break down. "Look at the cracks," Dr. Evans said. "They're spreading. The prison is weakening." Alex realized with horror that the timeline matched the spread of human colonies across space. As humanity had expanded beyond Earth, the collective consciousness that maintained the prison had become stretched thin. The Devourer was feeding on the growing gaps. In the containment field, "We need to get out of here," Captain Davis said. "This thing is trying to get into our minds." They began their ascent, but the damage was done. They had seen the truth. Humanity was not just a species that had evolved on Earth. They were the product of alien engineering, created for the sole purpose of keeping the galaxy's greatest threat. Locked away as they rose through the dark water, Alex wondered how many people would believe their story. And more importantly, he wondered what would happen when the rest of humanity learned that their entire existence was built on maintaining a cosmic prison. The Devourer was stirring, and the barriers that had held it for millions of years were beginning to fail. Humanity faced a choice they had never known they would have to make: abandon their expansion into space to reinforce the prison, or risk unleashing something that could destroy all life in the universe. The weight of that decision pressed down on them like the crushing depths of the ocean itself. The first shadow ship appeared near the outer rim of human space on a Wednesday morning. Commander Rick Stone was leading a routine patrol near Colony 7 when his sensors picked up something that shouldn't exist. "What the hell is that?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his second in command. She was staring at the scanner readings with confusion and fear. Rick looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. The object on their screens was shaped like a ship, but it was made of something darker than space itself. It absorbed light, instead of reflecting it, creating a hole in the stars. "All ships, this is Commander Stone," he said into his radio. "We have an unknown contact. Repeat, unknown contact in Sector 7. The shadow ship moved without engines. It glided through space like a living thing, heading straight for Colony 7. Rick's patrol ships moved to intercept, but as they got closer, something terrible began to happen. "Commander," Lieutenant Kim said, her voice shaking, "I can't feel my hands." Rick looked at his crew and saw that they were all becoming pale and weak. The life seemed to be draining out of them with every second they spent near the shadow ship. "All ships fall back," Rick ordered. "Do not approach the unknown vessel." But it was too late for the ship closest to the shadow. Rick watched in horror as the military vessel simply stopped moving. Through his telescope, he could see the crew inside, but they looked like statues. They were alive, but not moving, as if something had stolen their strength. The shadow ship continued toward Colony 7, leaving the disabled patrol vessel floating in space like a ghost. "Get me Admiral Carter," Rick ordered. "Now." On Mars Station Alpha, Admiral Carter received the report with growing dread. This was the nightmare scenario that Dr. Martinez had warned about. The Devourer was sending parts of itself into space, testing the defenses of human territory. "How many ships have we lost?" she asked Colonel Miller. "3 patrol vessels in the last 6 hours, he replied. "All of them drained of life force, but the crews are still alive. They're just empty." Admiral Carter looked at the tactical display showing human space. Red dots marked the locations where shadow ships had appeared. There were now 12 of them, and more were appearing every hour. "They're not attacking randomly," she realized. "They're going for the outer colonies first, the places where human consciousness is weakest." Dr. Martinez had returned from Earth with terrible news. The prison beneath the Pacific was failing faster than anyone had expected. As humanity spread across the galaxy, the collective consciousness that maintained the Devourer's cage was becoming too thin to hold. "The entity is using the cracks in the prison to send parts of itself into space," Dr. Martinez explained during the emergency meeting. "Each shadow ship is like a finger of the Devourer, reaching out to drain life from our colonies." The reports from the attacked colonies were horrifying. On New Sydney, half the population had fallen into a strange sleep from which they couldn't wake. They were alive but completely empty, as if their souls had been sucked away. Dr. Max Turner, a physicist working with Dr. Martinez's team, had been studying the shadow ships with long-range sensors. "The ships are made of dark matter and negative energy," he explained. "They don't attack with weapons. They drain the life force directly from living beings. Can we fight them?" Admiral Carter asked. Dr. Turner shook his head. "Conventional weapons pass right through them. They exist partially outside our normal space. The only thing that seems to affect them is concentrated human consciousness. This led to a desperate strategy. Admiral Carter ordered all military vessels to work in groups, with large crews focused on maintaining strong mental awareness. The combined consciousness of a ship's crew could sometimes drive off a shadow ship, but the effort left everyone exhausted. Meanwhile, Dr. Rose Kelly, a xenobiologist studying the Devourer's effects, made a discovery that changed everything. She found that the shadow ships weren't just randomly draining people. They were targeting specific individuals. "The entity is learning," she reported to the command staff. "It's identifying people with strong consciousness and draining them first. Teachers, artists, scientists, anyone whose mind contributes most to the prison's stability." The implications were terrifying. The Devourer wasn't just breaking free randomly. It was systematically weakening the human consciousness that kept it contained by targeting the people who mattered most. "We're fighting a war we can't win," Admiral Carter realized. "Every person it drains makes the prison weaker. Every colony we lose reduces our ability to contain it." The breaking point came when shadow ships appeared in the Sol system itself. Earth's orbital stations detected 3 of the dark vessels moving past Mars, heading directly for humanity's home world. "If they reach Earth," Dr. Martinez warned, "the prison will collapse completely. The planet contains the core of the containment system. Without it, the Devourer will be free to consume the entire galaxy." Admiral Carter made the hardest decision of her career. She activated Operation Homecoming, a plan that had been developed in secret over the past weeks. Every human colony would be evacuated, and the entire species would return to Earth to reinforce the prison. "All colony worlds, this is Admiral Carter," she announced over the emergency broadcast system. "You are ordered to begin immediate evacuation. All civilian and military vessels are to return to Earth. This is not a drill." The evacuation was chaos. Millions of people packed onto ships, abandoning homes they had built over decades. Colony 7 was the first to go dark, its population drained by shadow ships before the evacuation could be completed. As ship after ship arrived in Earth orbit, the gravitational readings from the planet's core began to stabilize. The return of human consciousness to Earth was strengthening the prison, but it might be too late. "The cracks in the containment field are still spreading," Dr. Martinez reported. "Bringing people back to Earth is slowing the damage, but it's not stopping it." Dr. Turner looked at the data with despair. "At this rate, we have maybe 6 months before the prison fails completely. And that's assuming no more shadow ships get through." But even as they spoke, sensors detected 20 more dark vessels emerging from the cracks in space near Jupiter. The Devourer was sending more of itself into the solar system, and each shadow ship that appeared made the situation worse. "We're not going to make it," Admiral Carter said quietly. "Even with everyone back on Earth, the prison is too damaged to hold." The shadow ships began their approach to Earth, moving like sharks through the darkness of space. Behind them, in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, something vast and hungry stirred in its ancient cage, tasting freedom for the first time in millions of years. Humanity had discovered their true purpose, but the knowledge might have come too late to save the galaxy from the cosmic horror they had unknowingly guarded for so long. The shadow ships reached Earth's atmosphere on a Sunday morning. Dr. Lisa Martinez watched from the orbital command station as dozens of dark vessels descended toward the planet like falling stars made of emptiness. "They're not attacking the cities," reported Captain Jake Sullivan, who had been monitoring the ship's movements. "They're heading for the ancient sites." On the surface below, the monuments that had protected Earth for millions of years began to flicker. The Great Pyramid's blue glow faded to a weak pulse. Stonehenge's vibrations stopped completely. Around the world, the prison system that had contained the Devourer was shutting down piece by piece. The entity is disabling the containment grid, Dr. Martinez said into her radio. It knows exactly what to target. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, the crystal walls of the ancient prison were cracking faster than ever. Dr. Alex Foster, who had remained at the underwater site to monitor the situation, sent increasingly desperate reports. The cracks are spreading exponentially, he radioed to the surface. I can feel the thing pressing against the walls. It's trying to communicate with me. Dr. Martinez felt a chill run down her spine. Alex, get out of there. Come back to the surface immediately. I can't, Alex replied, his voice strange and distant. It's showing me things. The truth about what will happen if it escapes. Through Alex's eyes, the devourer shared its vision of the future. Galaxy after galaxy consumed, their stars going dark one by one. Entire civilizations reduced to empty. Husks floating in space. The universe itself slowly dying as the entity fed on everything that lived. It's not evil, Alex continued, his voice barely human now. It's just hungry. It's been hungry for so long. Dr. Martinez realized with horror that the devourer was converting Alex, using him as a bridge to reach the surface. Cut the communication, she ordered. Now, but it was too late. Through Alex's mind, the entity's whispers began to reach every human on Earth and in orbit. The voices promised power, promised freedom from the burden of guardianship, promised an end to the endless vigil that humanity had unknowingly maintained. Why should we suffer for the galaxy? The whispers asked. Why should we sacrifice our expansion, our dreams, our future, to protect civilizations that ran away in fear? Some people began to listen. On the surface, riots broke out in major cities, as groups of humans demanded that the government release the devourer. They had learned the truth about their purpose, and they were angry about being used as cosmic prison guards. Admiral Helen Carter watched the chaos from Mars Station Alpha, which had become the temporary command center for human forces. We're losing control, she told Dr. Martinez. The entity's turning people against the mission. In her laboratory aboard the orbital station, Dr. Martinez worked frantically with engineer Paul Wright and computer specialist Joan Hayes on their last desperate plan. If human consciousness was the key to the prison, then perhaps they could evolve beyond their role as unconscious guardians. The quantum neural network is ready, Paul reported. But once we activate it, there's no going back. Everyone connected to the system will lose their individual consciousness. Joan looked up from her computer screens. The network will link every human mind through quantum entanglement. We'll become a single collective consciousness, powerful enough to not just contain the devourer, but to actively drain its power. Dr. Martinez understood the terrible price they were asking humanity to pay. They would survive as a species, but they would no longer be human in any way that mattered. Individual thoughts, personal dreams, private emotions, all of it would be lost in the collective mind. How long would it take? She asked. The process would be irreversible within 6 hours, Joan replied. Once the network reaches critical mass, every human consciousness will be absorbed into the collective. Below them, the shadow ships had reached the surface and were beginning their assault on the ancient monuments. The few remaining barriers that kept the devourer contained were failing rapidly. Admiral Carter received the final reports from Earth's surface. Stonehenge is down. The pyramids have stopped responding. We have maybe 2 hours before the prison fails completely. The moment of decision had arrived. Dr. Martinez called an emergency meeting with the leaders of humanity. Admiral Carter joined from Mars. Captain Sullivan represented the military forces in orbit. Governors from the evacuation fleets participated by video link. We have 2 choices, Dr. Martinez explained. We can maintain our individual humanity and watch the devourer consume the galaxy. Or we can sacrifice our individuality to become willing guardians of cosmic peace. The debate was brief but intense. Some argued that humanity had no right to make decisions for the entire galaxy. Others insisted that they had a moral obligation to prevent cosmic genocide. Governor Bill Jackson, speaking from the evacuation fleet, summed up the dilemma. Are we still human if we give up everything that makes us human? Or are we more human than ever if we choose to sacrifice ourselves for others? In the end, the vote was close. 51% of humanity's representatives chose transformation. It was enough. Dr. Martinez activated the quantum neural network with shaking hands. The effect was immediate. Around Earth and throughout the solar system, human minds began to connect. Individual thoughts merged into streams of collective consciousness. The change started slowly. People reported feeling the emotions and memories of strangers. Then the boundaries between minds began to blur completely. Within 3 hours, human individuality was disappearing into something larger and more powerful. The devourer fought back, sending waves of psychic energy through the shadow ships. But the emerging human collective was stronger than anything the entity had faced before. Where individual minds had been vulnerable, the unified consciousness was unbreakable. Dr. Martinez felt her own identity slipping away as the network absorbed her mind. Her last individual thought was a prayer that they had made the right choice. The transformation completed just as the prison's final barriers collapsed. The devourer surged upward from its ancient cage, expecting to find the galaxy open and defenseless. Instead, it encountered a wall of human consciousness, unlike anything it had ever faced. The entity that had consumed countless civilizations found itself not just contained, but actively diminished. The collective human mind began to drain the train. Devourer's power, feeding its energy back into the universe it had once threatened to destroy. Years passed. The shadow ships dissolved into harmless particles. The cracks in space-time healed. The galaxy, which had been empty of advanced life for millions of years, began to see the return of civilization. Alien ships approached the Sol system cautiously, expecting to find the fearsome guardians of ancient legend. Instead, they found something new, a collective consciousness that welcomed them with messages of peace and protection. The first alien delegation to reach Earth brought gifts of gratitude and offers of alliance. Their message was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Here dwell the willing guardians. Here begins the age of chosen protection. Humanity had evolved beyond individual existence, but in doing so, they had become something greater than they had ever been alone. The unwilling guardians had become willing protectors, and the galaxy was finally free to flourish under their watch. The cosmic prison still existed, stronger than ever, but now it was maintained by beings who had chosen their role, who understood their purpose, and who would never let the darkness escape again.